In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to recode a variable in SPSS. We're going to take an example of an interval ratio variable and change it into an ordinal variable. Sometimes variables are structured in ways that are not ideal, and we need to recode or collapse the variable. We may recode an interval ratio variable into an ordinal variable or a nominal variable. Or we may collapse an ordinal variable with many categories into an ordinal variable with fewer categories. For nominal and ordinal variables, each category is assigned a number because SPSS cannot understand words, it can only understand numbers. Interval ratio variables make more intuitive sense, but remember when you're converting an interval ratio variable into an ordinal variable, you want to make sure you're using numbers. You can also easily assign value labels in SPSS if you want to make sure that your new variable is easy to understand. So the categories in a variable can be collapsed to make them easier to comprehend. Let's take a look at the variable SIBS, which is the number of siblings that an individual has. Let's start by looking at a frequency distribution of this variable. We're going to go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequency. We're going to look at the variable SIBS, and we're also going to get some measures of central tendency that I left in there, I guess. Okay. So this variable ranges from 0 to 34, but you can see that the vast majority of respondents are clustered here at the top. There are certainly individuals that are responding. They have 29, 32, 33, and 34 siblings, but there are very few of them, and you can really see this if you look at this percentage column in the valid percent and the cumulative percent column. So let's say we want to collapse this variable SIBS into 4 categories. Right now it's an interval ratio variable, and we're going to collapse it into 4 categories, making it an ordinal variable. Remember that when we collapse variables, we want to collapse the categories into meaningful categories. So let's think about what the best way to do that would be. Let's say we're going to do 4 categories that amount to being an only child, because that might somehow be different than people who have siblings, somebody who has a small family, somebody who has a medium-sized family, and somebody who has a large family. So to actually recode the variable in SPSS, go to the Transform menu, and we're going to go down to where it says Recode into different variables. There is the option to recode into same variables, but you don't want to do this because it would overwrite your data. You always want to make a new variable, that way you always have the old original data available to you. So click Recode into different variables, and this option is going to let us take an existing variable and we're going to change it into a new variable. So it's going to make a new column in our data set. In general, it's always a good idea to do that. So let's get the variable that we want. The variable is SIBS, and we're going to place it in this box. So you've selected SIBS as your input variable, and now the box shows SIBS with an arrow pointing to a question mark. So what you need to do is you need to name your new variable, and over here in the name box, you can give it a name. So we're just going to call it SIBS4 because it's a 4 category variable. And you can also make a label for it, something like recode of SIBS into 4 categories. And then make sure you click the change button here, this blue button that says change. Make sure you click that. That changes the question mark into your new variable name. If you don't do this, then SPSS won't be able to create your new variable. Okay, so now that you see SIBS is turning into SIBS4, we can go ahead and tell SPSS the rules for making this new variable. So click on the box that says old and new values, and a new dialog box will open up. And here we're going to specify exactly how we're going to recode all of the old values into new values. You'll see the left side of the dialog box is the old values. These are the values associated with SIBS. Over here, these are the new values. These are the values that are associated with SIBS4. So we know that our variable SIBS ranges from 0 to 34. We want to make sure we account for every single value in that old variable. So what we'll do is we'll start with the value 0. The old value of 0 is going to stay 0 because we want to account for people who have no siblings. These are our only children. So once you have your old value and your new value rules, click on the Add button, this blue button right here, and you will see these rules appear in the dialog box here. So it says old with an arrow pointing to new. So 0 is going to stay 0, or 0 is going to become 0. The next category we have is a small family. So here, let's say we want to define a small family as somebody who has 1 or 2 siblings. So we can use the range option, and we can say people who have 1 through 2 siblings, they're going to be called a 1. We're going to add that here. So you'll notice our new variable has values of 0 and 1 so far. It's only going to have 4 total values because it's only going to be a 4-category ordinal variable. The next value is going to be a medium-sized family. So let's say that's anybody who has 3 through 5 siblings. Okay? And that's going to become a 2. So we've accounted for people who have no siblings, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 siblings. And in our last category, we want to account for large families. So that's anybody who has 6 or more siblings. So we can continue to use this range option, or we can go down to these range options. And here, we're going to use the range value through the highest. So that means the value you put in the box, which here we'll put 6, through the highest value available, which in this case is 34, but you don't need to know that, is going to become a 3. Okay. And then you're going to add that. So now we've accounted for every single value of our old variable sibs, and we have 4 new values, 0, 1, 2, and 3 for our new variable sibs4. The last thing you want to do is make sure you handle your missing cases. So anything that's missing here for your old variable needs to stay missing over here for your new variable sibs4. Once you've done that, go ahead and click the Continue button. Once you've clicked the Continue button, you're going to paste the syntax by clicking the Paste button right here, and it's going to go into your syntax editor. So you might have to go find that by looking in the icon for SPSS and going over to your syntax editor. So you can see here, this is your syntax for recoding a variable. Double check it to make sure it looks right. Zeros are going to stay zeros, 1 through 2 is going to become a 1, 3 through 5 will become a 2, and 6 through the highest value, in this case 34, will become a 3. So go ahead and run your syntax. And if you scroll down to the bottom of your output window, you're going to see that there's no output. There's just this box right here that says recode. This is not an error. This is not an error. This is telling you that SPSS ran your syntax. So the only way to look at your new variable is to either run a frequency distribution or go ahead and go to the data editor and see if it produced a new column. Let's start by doing that. So what you can do is you can go to your data editor window and then scroll all the way to the right. And let's see if our new variable exists. There it is, sibs4. So our new variable does exist. Now let's take a look at it and make sure we did everything correctly. So we'll go all the way back over here. And remember, in SPSS, you can always use shorthand syntax and do FREQ, freak, sibs4. Make sure you add a period at the end. Also, make sure you run a frequency distribution of your new variable, not your old variable. You've already done that, so you can compare the new variable to the old variable. So go ahead and run that. And here we are. This is the recode of siblings into 4 categories. So you can see 0, 1, 2, 3. Those are your 4 categories. And we always start with 0 to make it easier for interpretation. And you can compare those numbers to the frequency distribution up here. So you have 145 people with 0 siblings, and that should be the same down in your new variable, and you can go through and compare each of those values. You can also make sure that you did the missing values correctly. So look at your valid and your missing. So here, 2,988 valid cases, and let's scroll up. You can see 2,988 valid cases here as well. So you can always do a few checks once you have run this syntax.